Are you ready? Stand by.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Hartman, and welcome to the Three Gun Show, the world's largest three-gun podcast. This is episode 241 of the podcast with my guest, Tim Burke, of the Tactical Games. I met Tim just a few days ago as I record this when Mark Roth of Roth Performance introduced me to Tim at the event they were holding at Reveille Peak Ranch just outside of Austin, which incidentally is the same range that Texas Three Gun will be at again for the second year in a row. So Tim was an incredibly gracious host and willing to carve out an hour of his time on a busy match weekend to tell you about the new sport he's invented called the Tactical Games. So I know you're going to love this one, and I really enjoyed checking out the games and getting to cheer on friends of the show, like the aforementioned Mark Roth, as well as Jeremy Moore, Tess Saab, Jared Halbert. And by the way, Tess and Jared won their respective divisions, Tess in ladies and Jared in elite men's. And this was the second win in a row for both of them. So big congratulations to Jared and to Tess. Way to represent the three-gun crowd. One more thing before we get into the podcast. I am on this week's Vortex Nation podcast, which is number 58. If you want to check it out, I'll have a link in the show notes at threegunshow.com. This was a fun podcast to do because we picked a budget of $1,700, and each of us outfitted ourselves with a full three-gun kit, including the ammunition that we would need to shoot our first club match. We learned some stuff along the way, and I laughed so hard at Mark Boardman's list that I was actually crying. If you haven't listened to the Vortex Nation podcast, they do a lot of shooting topics, various topics, so like hunting, competitive shooting, and, in this case, three-gun. If that sounds like something you're into, be sure to check it out. Again, there will be links in the show notes at threegunshow.com. That's all for me this week. Now sit back and enjoy this interview with Tim Burke of the Tactical Games. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here.
Oh, I'm happy to have you, man. I've seen a lot of three-gunners straying from the three-gun realm and going into something new and exciting called the Tactical Games. And it's gotten like the little community thinking like, what's going on over here? And I got the opportunity to come out here to Reveille Peak Ranch where we're at, and I saw 3 of your events here on Saturday. And after watching the events, got to meet you. We're sitting down here for a podcast, and I'm really excited to talk to you, man. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. It was a good day so far.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to completing the weekend here.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and you picked an awesome venue, too, because this, we'll have to describe like what the Tactical Games is for people that are listening that may not have seen it. But for this type of event, like Reveille Peak seems like a pretty cool place to go because they do like a lot of Spartan races and Battle Frog events. So obstacles like currently exist. And so maybe a little less build time for you?
Yeah, it was a plug and play really for us.
Cool.
All of the cool things that add dimension and depth to our event were really in place. Today's events, what we call battles, didn't even really touch on the expanse of the property and the things that it offers. But tomorrow, when the athletes show up, they'll be crossing the entire breadth of the property and getting to see some scenery while they sweat and breathe hard. So a little beauty and torture. I don't know. There's a dichotomy there or something.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, there's some sort of Zen moment to be found along the way, right?
Sure.
Well, so Tim, let's take it back, man. I wanna talk about like the beginnings of the Tactical Games, but I want to get to know you as well, and I want the audience to get to know you as well. So, what's your background? Like, where did this joy of shooting and punishing other people come from?
Yeah, so I'll start at the beginning. I left home at 17 as a scared little kid from Northwest Indiana, and literally left home with the clothes on my back and joined the Army.
Okay.
17 years old. And the big joke is, at 17, I argued with my parents about a lot of things. strangely enough, I brought that contract home that they had to sign because I wasn't 18 yet. And there was no fight. They just signed it. And I thought, man, something just happened here, and I think I've been tricked.
That was the one thing you guys could agree on.
That's right. And off to the Army I went, and I spent my first 3 years, 11 months in the 82nd Airborne Division because I thought that was the coolest, baddest, toughest thing that a guy could do. I had never even heard of special forces or special operations or anything in those days. And so that's what I did. I was a paratrooper for 3 years and 11 months. I actually got out of the military for a short period of time. And then when the Gulf War, the first Gulf War kicked off, they called me one day and said, hey, are you willing to go and fight? And I was like, are you kidding? I'm a red-blooded American. Of course I am. What I didn't know is they'd already mailed me orders to report to Fort Bragg. And I literally got them the next day. During that time period, I did a temporary tour of active duty. It's called TTAD. And I was coming out of the post exchange, which is like an on-base Walmart, if you will.
Okay.
And there was a table there with a camouflage tablecloth and some, brochures and things, but there was a television with a video. And these guys on the video were skydiving, scuba diving, open sea kayaking, climbing mountains, rappelling, fast roping out of helicopters. And I looked at the guy and I said, dang, how do you get to do that? And he goes, you just sign right here.
Oh.
And I signed right there. And
you fell for it.
Little did I know, I had signed up for Special Forces Assessment and Selection and literally changed the entire course of my life right there, standing on the sidewalk in front of the post exchange. And
does that happen often? Like, is that like a common path into Special Forces?
Well, I think most guys are much more deliberate than I was. Several times in my life I've been a little spontaneous, and it's ended up being a good thing in the long run. But I might fly by the seat of my pants a little more than I should. You know what I mean?
Same.
Yeah. So the reason that's important is because that was the entrance into special operations. I became an SF medic. Immediately went to scuba school, and it was always my goal to go to the next level. What's next? What's better? How can I challenge myself more? And there was always the next beacon to walk towards, that next thing that I had to get. And so it was that whole, at first, I got to get scuba because that's the hardest thing. And well, then I got to get Halo school, military free fall. Yeah. And then I got to get to the shooting school. And then I got to, and it was just more and farther and faster and higher and better. And, I not very long after that set my sights on one of our special mission units. Most people would know it as Delta Force. They hear
I've seen the
name.
movie.
Right. It's exactly like that. That was the most exact movie ever made by Hollywood. I'm
sorry to derail you, but I watched that like about 3 months ago. It does not hold up, man. Like it is horrible.
Yeah. Anything that Hollywood ever tries to do about, whether it's SEAL Team 6 or the unit or FBI HRT.
Well, especially in like the late 80s, right?
Right. None of those things are ever accurate.
Right.
People go, hey, what did you think? I was like, yeah, it was 100%.
So you don't have motorcycles with missiles on them?
Well, I mean, I did. But that's just what I rode to work in the morning, I went there. I spent a couple years. I was actually what we call a DS medic, a direct support medic. So you're part of the, the package, if you will. But I was never going to be the number one guy through the door, right? That just wasn't my purpose there. Excuse me. Once I left there, I went to another unit within Special Forces that was kind of on what we call the gray side. You can do black side stuff, but you're sometimes doing white side stuff. And sometimes you're doing white side stuff while secretly doing black side stuff. So it's kind of a hodgepodge and a mix.
So I'm a civilian. Can you explain the gray versus
black thing? So black operations are operations that you can do with a unit that, a covert operation is we deny that it's happening.
Okay.
And a clandestine operation is that we deny it to them, but we deny it to ourselves too. I mean, our own country doesn't even, it's secret from our own
Interesting.
people. So that's clandestine operations. Covert operations is we don't tell the other country we're doing it.
Yeah.
So, Special Forces, SEALs, Marines, they'll deploy to other countries and operate out in the open. And that's what we call a white or a vanilla mission. A black mission or a covert operation would be we're deploying there under the guise of doing A.
Oh.
And while we're there, we're doing A, but we're really doing B too.
I got you.
And the country doesn't know you're doing B.
It's like a, hey, look over here while we're doing something over here.
So it's hidden in plain sight kind of a thing.
Interesting.
So I went to another unit in SF. My unit was called C37, Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group. And I spent the last 12 years of my career there. And so how that segues into the tactical games is when you're in units that are specialized like that, you don't have a lot of the constraints that regular units have. For example, we would do something called a RUT, a Realistic Urban Training Event. And you've seen the videos on YouTube with the black helicopters landing in the middle of a city street in Miami or something like that. Those are all Department of, DOD sanctioned missions, mostly done in conjunction with law enforcement. And they're really out of the box. I mean, you do crazy things. And to train up for them, you're doing very unorthodox type training. And so when you go back to even like the vanilla special forces, you're like, whoa. I mean, these guys are just not training the way we used to train.
Right.
And so I would take those training lessons and methodologies back with me. And over the years, we implemented those. And we created an event called SFAUC. It's SFAUC, Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat. And we actually did the pilot course back in 1997, 98. And now it's ubiquitous in Special Forces. It's used as a pre-deployment training tool.
Okay.
And every SF guy out there has gone through SFAUC at this point. And it was just kind of cool to be part of that initial
and developing the curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, we had a blank slate. We
Right.
said, hey, train these guys for combat. And so we did. So all of that training background and figuring out how do I get a guy ready to go to Sadr City, for example? How do I get a guy ready for a Mogadishu scenario where it's, a few lives against thousands in some cases? Right. And so you come up with really unique solutions. And so I just brought all those lessons out of the military with me. I did do law enforcement for about 4 years after I retired and implemented some of those things. And, everybody loves it. Every time I do it, even like on a shooting range, I go, hey, guys, let's do this. And they're like, dude, that's so cool. I've never done anything like that ever. And about the 100th time you hear that, you're like, there might be something here.
There's got to be a business in here.
Yeah, there's an opportunity. And frankly, one day I was watching it, and I had this idea in my head, and then, kind of baking it for a while. And then I was watching a YouTube video, and I'm not trying to be unkind to anybody, but there was a guy that was clearly out of shape, not an athlete in any way, good shooter, no doubt. I mean, the guy was lightning fast on the video. He did an El Presidente, and negative time. He was so fast, and done. And I was like, oh, that was impressive. And then the guy announcing or talking on the video said, and this athlete, and it struck me. And I was like, hold on a second. That's not an athlete. I'll show the world what an athlete is.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the impetus to finally open the oven and bring out this idea that I've been baking for a few years.
Right.
And, found some great people and said, hey, let's go do this and let's make it happen. And so we're in year number 2, and I think it's growing, and people seem to really, really love it. So I'll pause there. I've been talking.
No, man, that's quite the journey, by the way. That's like a life you can look back on and think like, I actually did some cool shit,
Yeah,
So first of all, good for you for that. But so when you decided to start the tactical games, like like, was the name first thing in your mind? Did you know what you were going to do? Did you have like a huge overview and like, how am I going to do this? Or was it like, I'm just going to go set up one of these and see if people will come?
My vision from the start was that I thought it could become an event, that we did multiple times a year. Let me back up and say the name. We've changed the name 3 times legally.
Oh, really?
I started with the Tactical Olympics. And then I found out that Olympics, you can't get near that name.
Yeah.
I mean, they will sue you yesterday,
there was a bar that got sued for beer Olympics one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
College story, but
yeah. I love it. But yeah, unless it's the Olympic Mountains in Washington or the actual Olympic Games.
Beer, or, if it's named after that kind of stuff.
You can't touch it.
Yeah.
So we really quick changed it. And at that time, a good friend of mine, Jeff Martone of the Tactical Athlete, he said, hey, let's, absolutely, let's connect the names. So it became the Tactical Athlete Games.
Yeah, okay.
And then we did an event, and his business changed, and some things had changed, and he was like, hey, guys, so sorry, you're not going to use that name. And so we scrambled, and I thought, well, just drop athlete, the Tactical Games.
Mm-hmm.
It's descriptive. Everybody kind of gets it. And it's simple, rolls off the tongue, and so that's what we went with.
Looks great on a patch.
Yeah, that's right. Looks good on a trademark. Know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
right.
But yeah, that's kind of how we got to the name. I thought maybe we'd do a couple of events a year, and it'd just kind of be a cool thing to go do. And literally after the very first event in Ardmore, Tennessee, I was just reflecting that night, and I said, man, we didn't create an event. We just created a new sport.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so from that moment
So what was it then that let's pause right there.
Yeah.
What was it about that first event that, like, we've got magic here, like, we created a sport? Like, what was it specifically that, like, lit that off for you?
Well, I don't know that I can point to any one thing, but it was an amalgamation of the comments that we received from the athletes. Like, finally somebody did something like this is a very common thing we hear. This is great. Somebody blended the 2 things that I love in life, shooting and athleticism. And just watching this thing unroll that day. I'm very entrepreneurial minded anyway, and just kind of seeing it roll out and seeing it come to fruition, it's kind of crystallized the vision that, this is more than something I can just do a couple times a year. This is something that people are really going to enjoy, and to kind of prove that theory is when we put the second event last October on the calendar. We had a very small Instagram following back then, and it's growing tremendously fast now. But we started seeing posts of 62 days out to the Tactical Games, and a guy's dragging a sled. I've never seen this guy in my life, and here he is, like, buying. He's all in, and that was a win for me. Because now I'm going, man, guys are getting off the couch.
Yep.
And getting into the gym. We had guys now that have lost 25, 30, 35 pounds over their preparation time. And that's the win for me. If I never make a penny, if I just break even and the Tactical Games, proliferates, but it gets people engaged and makes better athletes and better shooters, that's a win for me.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Now, at this point, I think it's going to be way bigger than that. But yeah, so I think I've kind of gone on to a tangent there. But
no, I think that's great. I really like that. And so first of all, I'm really excited for you because, like, I love the shooting sports. And so to see another shooting sport pop up and has, something of, like, mass appeal to it that can get, not only people who are in the shooting sports, like that dude that needs to lose a few pounds but has a great El Presidente, as well as, like, veterans like yourself, law enforcement, military, that sort of thing, and all coming together and playing on the same range. And that was one cool thing that I saw when I was out there is, like, I'm looking at all my 3-gun buddies side by side with, guys that are in their work gear. Dudes that are literally wearing their vest that they wear to work.
Yeah.
So that was what I thought was cool to see. And that's something, I'm guilty of myself, thinking, like, the tactical world and the competition world but it's cool how they the merge out here on the range under your banner, you know. So that was really fun to see. So it's exciting times.
And I'll tell you, we suspected early on that the military would be the larger portion of the demographic we would see, and maybe that was just a mental bias that I have because I spent so many years.
Military,
right. At the first event, we literally saw 33% military or prior military, 33% police or prior police, and 33% shooting sports enthusiasts. And now I will tell you, the second year going into our fifth event, we're looking at the civilian shooting sports side is growing quicker than the other two demographics.
Yeah.
Part of it, I think, is most of the guys from the military that would be attracted to this event are really confined to a geographical space. They can't travel more than 2 or 3 hours from their home base because they're on the beeper, if you will.
Yeah.
If something happens, they've got to be
you're a couple
able to
hours
go
from a
back.
base here.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of military guys out there now.
Right.
Yeah.
So
man, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool to see what we call the tactical
Yeah.
building. You know, and literally we have friendships and businesses that have started from that first event.
No kidding.
And people are just doing life together.
Do you have an example of a business?
I'm going to draw a blank.
Yeah, I'm
now.
sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Let's table that, and if you think of it,
Sure,
we'll come back to
sure.
it. Just say it. But so when you talk about the civilian market, so for me, like I've, I guess I was shooting when I was like 12 years old or something like that. Got my hunter safety, pop cans in the woods, things like that. Hunting with the family, upland birds, and then kind of got out of it once I went to college. Came back into it like almost when I was 30, like in my late 20s, and then several years later discovered 3-gun, right? And at the time, like I was looking for something to do with an AR-15 that I just built, and I'm like, oh, cool, I can bring my pistol too to this 3-gun event, and like seeing it on YouTube. I really thought like, oh man, that's so exciting. That looks like a ton of fun. But if they had the tactical games at the time, like I totally would have went to do that.
That's awesome.
Too.
That's awesome.
And
so you're already part of the tactical.
Yeah, pretty much. So I've done Tough Mudder, Spartan Race, Warrior Dash, et cetera, just like name it. Several dozen obstacle races. So this is like, super exciting, like right up my alley.
Yeah,
so
very cool.
I'm totally friendly to the cause, and then you throw like shooting in there, and I think it's pretty badass as well. So now I think that there's probably like just an absolute shitload of guys like me out there that, we're sitting in a cubicle on the weekends. They go play and they play hard. They dedicate their vacation dollars and their fun dollars to fitness, to shooting. These two combine both of those. They can travel to, like we're here just outside of Austin, Texas. You've got events in Georgia, Florida, et cetera, South Carolina, correct me if I'm wrong. And like that, I think appeals to the large base of the populace that are dudes in their late 20s, late 30s, or mid 30s, et cetera, and on the outskirts of those, ladies as well, that feel unfulfilled by like daily life and want to go out and like actually test themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely falls into the realm of challenging yourself. A good case in point, there's I'll call her name from Instagram. It's Glock RN77 on Instagram.
We'll look her up.
And she came to the last event in Meridian, Mississippi, and she was afraid of heights, claustrophobic, and absolutely terrified of doing the tactical games because she was afraid. And you can go on there and you can see her posts. And she says, before the tactical games, I was terrified I've never climbed a rope in my life because it was too high. I don't get into small spaces. And in one weekend, I climbed a rope 18 feet high, not once, but 3 times, and crawled through, I don't know how far it was exactly, but it was, a couple 100 feet of tunnels.
Oh, you're kidding.
And she came out. I was right there when she came out. And she did take a flashlight. And when she came out the other end, it was just this, like, you could see glory come across her face, like, I just did this.
Yeah.
And she did this most amazing post. and talked about conquering fear and conquering self and being an overcomer. And it was super, super cool to see. The beauty of that is that can be anyone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Which leads me to the number one question I get asked is, how fit do I have to be to come and compete in the tactical games? My answer is always the same. I say, well, what do you want to accomplish? And, then they go, what do you mean? Or, they'll tell me. And I say, well, what I mean by this is if you want to meet some great people, have an amazing experience, and challenge yourself, come on out. There's no time limit. We're not going to set you off on an event and time you out. And go, yeah, you just fail. Go sit down. Mm-hmm. We will never do that. Matter of fact, you're going to have 50 or 60 people standing around cheering for you and clapping and, come on, you got this.
It's very CrossFit atmosphere here.
Very, very much so.
Yeah, it's not so much three-gun atmosphere.
Yeah. So, we're actually thinking about bringing in what we're calling a non-competitive division.
Oh, dude,
so
that would be
people
awesome.
can just come and pay and and do it.
Spartan Race does that. They have, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they have
please.
like their elite heats that run first, and then everyone after that is just in it for the medal.
Just for the fun, yeah. So we're thinking about doing that and seeing kind of how that's received. Mm-hmm. I've gotten feedback in both directions. Like, no, don't do that. It'll, what's the word? Water down.
Yeah.
The other, and I'm like, I don't think so. There's two distinct.
I don't think so either, dude.
Categories. Now the other side of that is I say, well, if you want to come and you want to win, that's a completely different story. Yeah. You better bring your A game because everybody else is. So how fit do you have to be? It just depends on what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
So.
Man, that's a really good point, and I like that you said that because from the outside, you think it started with like special forces background. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned CrossFit a few times on your website, so you kind of get in the mind of like the CrossFit Games kind of thing, and you think like, oh, that's going to be too intimidating for me to come out and compete in. So I like that you said that.
Yeah.
And I think probably adding the I don't know what you would call it, fun guy division.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the beer drinking division.
Fun guy, that's too much like a mushroom.
Yeah, yeah, that wouldn't fly.
I'm
actually.
A fun guy.
Yeah, I think that would add a lot to it, and it would probably bring a lot more people off the couch and show them like, hey, you know what? You run this for fun division for a couple of years, and then go bump up into the elite. Once you're comfortable with it.
Yeah. We've had a couple of success stories of guys that came out the first time, mm-hmm. Maybe the second or third event, and they came to me and said, hey, my attitude was, look, I'm going to come and do this. I know I'm not going to win, mm-hmm. but I can't not do it. Once I saw it, I was like, you can never go back and undo what you didn't do. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so they came out and did it, overweight, breathing hard, struggled through it. Mm-hmm. And it lit such a fire under them that they went back. And again, I've seen guys lose 20, 25 pounds and come back and actually become competitive. And, they were right in there with the horsemen. Yeah. And that thrills my heart to see people's lives changing because of something that I thought would be fun. And they buy into it and they're like, hey, this is awesome. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah. So that's super cool.
That is super cool. And so with, so I struggle with that, Tim, because with what I do, like we make noise on the range, we make, loud bangs and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so with this, like I know I'm distributing good information to people. I'm helping them get better at their game. But in reality, it's like, am I helping people live a better life? Mm. And like, so some days I'm like, yeah, definitely. And some days I'm like, I don't really know. But it sounds like for you, like you have like specific people you can point at, like this is going to help me sleep better tonight because I know that this is a healthier individual because of what they chose to do based on wanting to come out and play this game. Yeah. It's exciting.
I'll tell you, it's hard to tell this without getting a little misty. I had one guy, former
podcast, no one will know.
Yeah. You will. You're looking at my eyes. Guy came up to me after the North Carolina event, retired military, and he said, "Man, I got out. I bounced job to job. I haven't found a place to belong." And he said, frankly, I started kind of spiraling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, without saying much more, I'll just say the tactical games gave me a reason to live.
Yeah.
Wow. You start taking a deep breath and going, man, somebody released some pepper spray in here. You know
I
what I mean?
know.
It'll jerk some tears from you.
That's powerful.
To see somebody, come through something like that. And again, it was something fun I thought that I would create. And to see so many people just really gravitating towards it, it's been very fulfilling and very exciting.
Yeah. I can't tell you like how excited I am watching. I'm having trouble finding words here. How excited I am finding this match out here. Coming to watching the. Do you call them battles? Is that
battles,
right?
Yeah.
Coming to watching the battles and the people just fighting hard and hearing people cheering for them and stuff like that. It's really cool, and it was fun to be a part of that today. So let's talk about the format a little bit. So if someone hasn't seen this on Instagram, they've been hiding in a hole and they're not really familiar with what's going on, what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about like a fitness competition that incorporates a shooting component as well. So what can I expect? Like let's start this way. What's your next event?
So next event's June 22nd at
Okay.
the South River Gun Club just outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
Covington, Georgia.
Okay. So Covington, Georgia. So if I want to go shoot that match, like what should I be prepared for if I go?
So I would have to answer that by telling you our slogan, which is no off season.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is all over every sign as I was driving in here.
Yeah, very cool.
I'm like, I must be in the right place.
So those are the breadcrumb trails leading you in. Even your navigation there's no off season, right? You gotta get here.
That's right.
So if you look at first responders, you look at military, police officers, even firefighters, we're not, limited to those people. We have dentists. There's a dentist here this weekend competing, and he's been at 3 or 4 events. We've got attorneys. We've got housewives.
Salespeople, business owners.
Yeah, financial advisors.
Range masters.
Exactly.
Gunsmiths.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the other people I know.
When I say first responders, I'm not saying that those are the only people that are here. But the original concept was you take an NBA player, a soccer player, a baseball player, a hockey player that plays professionally. They all have one thing in common, and that's they have an off season.
Right.
They go home and they relax for part of the year. They go to preseason training, and then they're back in their season. The one thing that military, special forces, SEALs, MARSOC, police officers, SWAT officers, sheriff's deputies, firemen, DEA agents, you name it, FBI guys. One thing that all those people have in common, like the athletes, is they have no off season.
Right.
They're on point 24/7, 365 with no off season. So that's where that came from. And I totally forgot the original question.
No, it's totally cool. So what can I expect when I go to a match?
Yeah, so
next I'm going to lead that into how can I prepare, but I want to know let's give the audience an idea of like when they show up, what's going to happen.
Okay, so I'll just kind of talk through today. We showed up as every event. We do a sign-in. We do a safety briefing, a medical briefing, and then we do the national anthem. We're always going to support and respect our country. And then we do our what they call squatting. Give people assignments and send them off in their battle groups, we call them, to their first event. One of the events that we do very regularly is called the Horrigan, named after Bob Horrigan, and it's a sled drag event. And depending on what division you're in, depends on the weight that's put on the sled. So the elite division is carrying 2 45-pound plates and a 25-pound plate. So
okay.
I don't do math in public usually, but that's over 100 pounds plus the sled. Okay. You drag it down.
10.
Yeah, it's over 100
15.
pounds. We'll just call it over 100
Over
pounds.
100 pounds. 120.
So they drag the sled 50 yards and shoot 10 rounds on steel at 25 yards. Drag the sled back, and then they sprint back up, shoot, come back, get the sled, drag it up. So they do 5 times. It's sled up and back, sprint up and back, sled up and back, sprint up and back, sled up and back. Total of 50 rounds.
That was one of the events I got to watch today.
So that's called the Horrigan, named after Bob Horrigan, a good friend of mine who's killed in Iraq. You look at that, and it's so simple, but people confuse simple with easy.
Yep.
And the whole premise, it embodies everything that we're after. My normal thing that I say is I can stand at 50 yards with my pistol, and I can shoot a steel target all day long. And I'm not going to miss until you get my heart rate up to about 145, 150 beats a minute.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it becomes exponentially harder to hit that same target. You can ask any police officer, you can ask any military guy that served in combat. Once you've had 3 days of sleep deprivation, you've been on the go, in helicopters, walking on the ground, in up-armored vehicles, been in a couple firefights or whatever, it changed the dynamic. You're not standing at 50 yards at complete rest, totally relaxed, and shooting a steel target.
Right.
It changes the dynamic, and it puts stress on you, stress on your body. So all we're trying to do is replicate that in each event. So how do you win the tactical games? 6 minutes at a time, right? Deal with the stress and mitigate the response of that stress through deeper breaths, elevated pulse. The better you are at mitigating that and coming back to your center and shooting, the better you're going to do. So what can they expect? They can expect a physical challenge, but they can also expect a mental challenge. Mm-hmm. The worst enemy out there is not the person next to you on the firing line. It's right inside your own head. And you can see guys get in their own heads. And I literally had a guy, a good friend of mine, he's actually here at this event. I'm not going to call any names. He got out of his mojo on the first event in Meridian. He said, I forgot how to climb a rope. I was like, what? How do you do that?
I saw a guy today drop the tow rope on the sled, and he went to run down range, and then he stopped and went back and put the tow rope on and started tugging the sled again until people started yelling at him like, no, this is the sprint one.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, that seems so simple, like sled, sprint. It seems so simple, right? Until you're on your third one and you lose your mind of like, I'm oxygen deprived, like my eyesight's going, my brain function's going. I just set this thing down. I must need to pick it up again, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I actually heard that. We did the briefing this morning for the sled drag, and JP Cervantes was talking. He went through it, and he goes, pretty simple, huh? And then Ashley Sperlin, he's been in a Recoil magazine video for us, he said, yeah, it seems simple. He said, wait for a few minutes and it won't be.
Yeah.
And again, that's another part of stress.
Right.
Is people don't realize that the way you think under stress changes. Mm-hmm. And as something as simple as counting, sled, no sled, sled, no sled, sled, it becomes a very difficult task under stress.
Yeah, and then but repeatedly doing stressful things like that, in your training or in events like this, inoculate you to when stressful events actually do happen in life, like they become less stressful, right? Like you raise the bar on the amount of stress that you can handle as a human. And
you hit on such a good point. I could teach an hour-long class on what you just said. And I put out a couple of blogs on our webpage about this. Breath control and thinking through what you're doing. I know that sounds funny. People go, well, of course you're thinking through. Not necessarily. People stop thinking many times under stress. And what it is there, to kind of give it to you, there's 4 quadrants in a square. There's broad and narrow focus, and internal and external focus. Okay. And one of the things that I was taught in special operations is, for example, doing CQB. You go into a building, as you enter a door, you go into a room, you have a very broad external focus. So if you imagine my eyes are picking up everything in the room at once. And once I identify a target, that broad focus narrows down to a pinpoint focus on my target. I shoot, boom, 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 boom. I reassess, yep, I've taken care of the target, and then I have to push my awareness back out to, again, take in more information. And somebody who's really good at urban warfare, military operations in urban terrain, CQB, they're good at modulating between a broad and narrow focus at the expense of the internal focus.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
So what does that look like? A guy that has the best skill sets in the world is no good to me in a combat situation if he's all focused on inside. Oh, I'm doing such a good job. I'm so proud of myself. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to shut all that out. Internal doesn't matter anymore. It's what's going on the outside. I have to think through it, solve the problems, get home alive, make sure my buddy gets home alive. So that's not unlike solving the problems out here on the battlefield, quote unquote, at the tactical games. As you're moving down the field, you're moderating and modulating your awareness. Okay, here's my target. We shot steel plates today that were about 3 inches wide on a little steel tree. And you can see guys that are so focused on the guy next to them shooting that it was distracting them. They couldn't hit what they were aiming at. And the guy that could focus hyper on his front sight and his little steel target was the one that was going ting, 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 and then he was off and running again.
Yeah,
so that's a skill set that you can develop over time.
Okay. Well, so in competitive shooting, it's a rare event when you're shooting next to someone, like someone shooting at the same time as you. Generally, we have one shooter go at a time, right? So one situation where that is different is a shoot-off. Are you familiar with the shoot-off format?
I've not been to one.
So just imagine like you've got an array on the right side and an array on the left side, and they're a mirror image of each other. Okay. You have a shooter on the right and a shooter on the left. In the middle, you have two pepper poppers, and they fall over on top of each other.
Okay, I've done that. I've never heard it called that before.
Yeah, so it's called a shoot-off, right? And so then when the pepper popper falls, whoever's on the bottom wins, right?
Okay.
When you run to your position and you start shooting, you can hear the other guy shooting, and you have to learn to exclude that from your hearing. Otherwise, you're going to be not concentrating on your sights. You're not going to be concentrating on your trigger press and the things that you have to do to make that happen. And it can destroy a person's mental game and take a very good shooter and make them a shit shooter in a very small amount of time. So that in itself is its own special skill set that a lot of people don't have. And we saw that with 5 people on the firing line. Today. It's pretty interesting because that's like an extra little piece of that game that is not often played in shooting sports. Yeah.
And the other thing that we see too is when we have guys shooting next to each other, or gals, we have gals too.
Sure.
One guy may be bam, 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 shooting, and the other guy's taking his time, bam, 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 and the guy that's shooting slower starts to panic because the other guy finishes and he leaves the firing line and he goes, oh crap, I'm getting behind. When in reality, the other guy didn't hit anything. So every time he pulled the trigger was a 10-second penalty. So if the guy just keeps focusing and hitting what he's shooting at, we're rewarding the accuracy and the speed, not just the speed and not just the accuracy. It's got to be a perfect blend of those two things.
Yeah. So this is a very accuracy intensive scoring system that you have out here. So, so how many events does a competitor compete in over, I'm sorry, you call them competitors?
Athletes.
Athletes. Okay. How many events does an athlete compete in over the weekend?
6 events total.
6 events. Okay. 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday, typically, right?
Yep.
And then, okay. So when they're competing on, Saturday, are the events different than Sunday, or do you kind of mix them around? You mentioned
every event's different.
Okay, let's get into that.
And every venue is different.
Okay.
We only repeat a couple of things like the Horrigan, the sled drag. That's a staple. But we change the events every time we go somewhere new to take advantage of whatever's found on that particular venue.
Cool. Good to know.
For example, in Meridian, Mississippi, at the Public Safety Training Center there, they had an Amtrak train, and we had guys shooting from an Amtrak train cab.
Sweet.
A 40-foot fire tower that was specifically for fire training, but we ran to the top, shot out of windows on the 3rd floor, and then ran to the 5th floor, and we're shooting over a lake, 220 yards over a lake. They had a rubbleized tunnel complex where, again, Glock RN-77 was crawling through this tunnel complex. So here at Reveille Peak Ranch, we've got 1,350 acres of hill country in Texas. And the athletes will be getting intimately familiar with that terrain tomorrow morning.
Chasing cows.
So to be clear, we'll take some events with us that will be repeats because they embody everything that we're trying to get them to learn, the athletes to learn about them and their shooting. But then we generally recreate the, at least 4 of the battles every time we go someplace to utilize what's available.
Cool. Okay. And so rifle and pistol are the 2 guns that are used. Are rifle and pistol used in every single battle?
No, sometimes like the Horrigan's just pistol.
Okay.
As much as possible, we have them carry both weapon systems. Sometimes it's like tomorrow will be a heavy rifle day. Today was a heavy pistol day. Tomorrow we'll focus more on rifle. They'll almost always have their pistol for the last maybe a drop plate, and then sprint to the finish line. And what we'll do is if it's not heavy pistol, or sometimes even if it is, we'll give them a round count that's slightly more than what they need. And if they can shoot that drop plate in one shot, let's say there's 9 bullets left in the gun. When they get done at the end, that's like currency. They buy back 10 seconds at a time with every bullet they have.
That's cool.
But if that guy's down there and he's not focusing, he's got a broad external focus and he's not seeing his sights and his target, and he's just shooting rounds and airball, that's time he's not only spending standing there shooting, but it's rounds that he doesn't get to trade in for time at the end for bonus time.
Interesting.
So
yeah, so you're wasting the time, plus you're also not getting your 10-second bonus at the end. Oh, man.
So it's double indemnity.
Yeah. Well, and your penalties are really stiff too, right?
Well, not as stiff as they would be in combat.
Yeah, no kidding.
But, if you miss there, you die.
No, I totally understand. But for like our audience, most of them are competitive shooters or interested in competitive shooting. So we're used to piddly stuff like a 5-second miss or a 2.5-second miss or something like that.
Right.
But yours are a little bit more stiff than that.
And again, I love 3-gun. I'm actually getting entered. I've never shot a 3-gun competition. I'm familiar with it. I've been to one now. Mark Roth invited me up, and I got to go to one 2 weekends ago in Kentucky at Rock Castle.
Oh, yeah.
And fascinating. I went up there to kind of see how they were doing things.
You went to the Rock Hard then, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And the point of that visit was to see what I was doing wrong and to see what I was doing right. Not to recreate what they're doing.
Sure.
But from a business perspective, they've been, 3-gun's been around for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. I don't know. I don't need to recreate the wheel.
Yeah, since like the early 80s, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm a year old in my business. I don't want to recreate what they've already gone through and learned. So I went up to see, and they welcomed me with, open arms.
Well, what's cool is like they've got 40 years, or we've got 40 years of mistakes we made that we can tell you all about. So you don't make them again.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So the reason I asked that question is not to compare and contrast, but more of like to just give people an idea of like if they were interested in the tactical games, like how they would make a strategy around it, and like how important hits are here, where they may not matter as much time-wise in 3-gun, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Every hit counts. And again, what we try to do, some of it, it's a game, right?
Sure.
In the end, when we go home at night, nobody died and nobody was shooting at you. So it's a game, but we base it on the principles of combat.
Okay.
And in combat, if you miss, you could die. Or even worse, your partner could die.
Right.
So, is there a stiff penalty? Yeah, we try to make it as costly as we can without being ridiculous.
And are penalties different for each battle?
Well, the way they're counted may differ between battles, but basically a miss is 10-second penalty.
Okay.
The stiffer ones are an FFI, which is a failure to follow instructions.
Okay.
For example, if we say, hey, you're going to do a failure drill on this target, so 2 in the main center mass, then 1 to the head. And they go down and you only have 2 in the body, 2 in the body, 2 in the body between the 3 targets. They failed to follow instructions.
So you get 3 failure to follow instructions
3
on that one?
3 FFIs, and that's 30 seconds each.
Oh.
So you could
Damn.
literally lose the match by not following instructions one time.
Interesting. Well, and to go back with what you said about the mental stress put on by your physical exertion, trying to remember those instructions you were given 4 minutes ago, when now you feels like you've been doing this battle forever. That's where like the mental game comes into play, and like you really have to keep your wits about you. That's cool.
One of the things we added in North Carolina that we didn't bring out here to Texas, and there's several reasons for that behind the scenes, but we add brain games.
Okay.
And actually consult with a former psychologist that worked with us in special operations at Fort Bragg. And he runs the Special Psychological Applications Group, SPA is the acronym. And he's helped me design some things. But for example, one of the things is right before the athletes took off on a particular battle last event, we wouldn't tell them what or why. We walked up as they were locked and loaded, ready to go. We'd hand them a piece of paper. And on each piece of paper was a 6-digit number. We didn't tell them what to do with it or anything. Just, you got 30 seconds. The implication is you probably should memorize it, right? But we don't tell them to. We just hand it to them. 30 seconds later, we pick all those papers up, and we say, all right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go, and we launch them. That ended up, that particular battle was a 5-mile kit run, and 1.5 miles into it was an old farmhouse. And when they got to that farmhouse, they were called over. Hey, come in here. And once they entered, depending on what lane they were in, 1 through 5, there was an ammo can sitting on a table labeled 1 through 5. And that 6-digit number was really 3 2-digit numbers to a padlock. And so you had some people that could remember the number, but they couldn't open the padlock because they didn't know how. And then you had some people that could open a padlock, but they couldn't remember the number. And so you heard a lot of profanity, and if they couldn't, they had to stay there for 4 minutes.
Oh, man.
Even though they're like, screw it, I can't do it. Okay, well, you got another 2 minutes and 10 seconds to wait until you're free to leave. And again, it's just getting people to think.
Yeah.
And the whole strategy is when you're under the sympathetic nervous system, it's that fight or flight, go and grow. You're growing in strength and you're going fast. That's that bust through the door mentality. It is extremely difficult to purposely pull yourself out of that into the parasympathetic nervous system, where it's take a deep breath, settle down, and figure it out.
Right.
And those drills are designed to specifically do that very thing. And when you got somebody that's, I'm going to win, I'm going fast, that guy's 50 yards ahead of me, and you make them stop and think, you can literally see the pain on their face. Because
now you got the clock ticking in your head, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've been adding those kind of brain games, but it's easy. It's easy to overdo those.
Yeah.
So for this event, we kind of backed off on those a little bit. And,
can I tell you about a brain game that I experienced
please.
one time? So Spartan Race a few years ago, we heard at the beginning of the season, the first race that they did of the season, that they had this little code that you had to remember, and then you had to recite it, or you had to go into a certain area or whatever. I can't remember what the puzzle was later on in the race, right? And this was like I want to say that this was like a 8 to 10 mile race or something like that. So you had to remember for a couple miles, and then we knew that was coming. And the penalty is 30 burpees, which no one wants to do any burpees, right? Because that smokes you. So we knew that was coming, and so we're like, all right, we got this, no problem. And so we did the Spartan race at I think it's Fort Carson. Does that sound right?
Colorado?
Yeah, Colorado Springs, Fort Carson, right?
Fort Carson. Yep.
There's so many forts in Colorado Springs. I always mix them up. So yeah, we're doing the Spartan race on Fort Carson, and we get to this big sign, and it has it says check your bib or something like that, and a number equals letter. So your bib's like 347. You look up there and you're like, well, I knew it was 6 digits, but you look up there and you're like, okay, November, hotel, kilo, and like, so you're, okay, I got that, and you run on. And then you're remembering that the entire race. You're crawling under barbed wire. You're lifting Atlas stones. You're you're carrying sandbags. You're climbing walls. You're climbing ropes. You get to the end, and it's like, well, we never used the code.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was just a mind F of like, yeah, remember this.
Right, right. Well, in our case, if you open the ammo case, there was a name in there.
Okay.
And so once you finish the 5-mile run, I guess I should back up. We use cartoon characters. So some of the Disney characters, for example, Daffy Duck, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse. But underneath it was, Bill, Dan, Patricia, or what have you.
Okay.
So when they opened the can, they got to see that sheet with the names and the characters that morning. For about 45 minutes, it was out hanging up. And then we took it down. And we didn't tell them anything. Again, it was just be observant. Yeah. Take it all in.
Yeah.
And so probably 2.5, 3 hours later, now they're remembering this number, and they open the ammo can, and it just says Dan. And now, okay, keep moving. Now they got to remember, Dan was Pluto.
Oh.
And so you get to the final after 5 miles of 98 degrees, and, you've stopped sweating a mile ago, and you actually have the chills when it's 98 degrees. You're about to go down. And you come in and it's like, all right, you remember what your target is? And they got to step up and look for that target.
Oh, you're kidding.
And shoot it. And then that was when their time stopped. And there was a lot of cussing.
Oh yeah. God, man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I like that one.
I enjoy torturing people.
Yeah, you sadistic son of a bitch. You have to be to be in this type of business, right?
Yeah.
So, man, that sounds awesome. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
So, if someone's training, let's talk about training then. If someone's training for this type of event, they're like, okay, well, that sounds completely right up my alley. I like dragging sleds. I like lifting sandbags and Atlas stones and climbing ropes and things like that. I love shooting guns. I want to do this.
Yep.
What kind of training does someone have to do to do this?
So all of the things that we do are related to combat. So I would start by saying that. So
marksmanship first?
Yes. I'm about to say go to a CrossFit gym.
Okay.
But you're never going to see bar cycling. You're never going to see the clean and jerk. You're never going to see a snatch or the Olympic lifts. You're not going to see that. At the tactical games.
Closest you get would be like a farmer carry.
Yeah. So strongman style events, farmer carries, sled drags, big stone, picking up big stones, picking up heavy things, dragging heavy things. And then you get into the more gymnastic style things, rope climbs, obstacle courses, going over a wall, low crawling. Those are all things that you either do or have an equivalent in combat, right? I could carry a wounded buddy. That'd be picking up and carrying a heavy thing like the Atlas stone today.
Or sandbags tomorrow.
Yes.
Climbing walls to, get in and out of places.
Get into a target and execute the mission, right?
Right.
So everything is based on that. So a CrossFit style program where you do a metabolic conditioning exercise every day and strength. I would say, and I'm going to get crucified for saying this, if I had one exercise that I had to pick above any else and I couldn't do any others to prepare for the tactical games or life, it would just be running.
Really?
I would just run.
Huh, okay.
That is the single greatest differentiator at the tactical games, is being able to move.
Yeah. Yeah, so in everything you did today, there was ground that you had to cover. And it may have been ground carrying something heavy or dragging something heavy, but there was definitely ground you had to cover in every single event that I watched.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Interesting.
I mean, think about combat. What is it? You're covering ground and you're shooting. Covering ground and you're shooting. You're covering ground carrying something heavy, and then you're shooting. So that's what we try to replicate.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So run your ass off. Maybe get to a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I like it.
One of the things that we do that's out of the box for many shooters
Mm-hmm.
is we push distances. It would surprise most people that most of the engagements you're going to see maybe a little closer in Iraq because of the urban nature of the battle there.
Right.
But specifically in Afghanistan, for example, you're 250 to 400 yards out in most cases.
Yeah, and you've actually seen like a lot of things change because of the battles in Afghanistan. So again, this is civilian point of view, but it seems like America's always prepared for the last war they fought, right? Like they in World War II, we were so prepared to fight another World War II that we went to Vietnam and got our asses handed to us.
Sure.
And then in, I guess, Iraq, like you're saying, everything's close. And then in Afghanistan, everything's like super far away because you're shooting from mountain to mountain.
Yeah.
Am I correct on that?
Yep. In many cases, yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like gear's changing now too.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed is you guys have like a red dot only sort of policy. Why is that?
So the other side of that is I've sought counsel from guys in other shooting sports, three gun specifically, and they're like, hey, we love what you're doing. Don't change it. Because in many cases, and this is a blanket statement, and I know this, it doesn't apply everywhere. But they said in many cases, three gun has become a gear race more than a skill test, right? You're not testing skill anymore. You're testing, can I get a sponsor to give me, this very expensive optic or what have you. And so we keep it a red dot on the rifle only because I want to see how much skill that person has. Not necessarily how much they can leverage technology.
Okay. I got you.
So, look, if I can shoot a 350, 400-yard target with no magnification, and I can do it pretty accurately and pretty quick, what can I do when I put an optic on there?
Right.
Well, I'm a deadly, killer. So,
and that's one of the complaints we hear about three gun all the time is it's so gear intensive to get to, and when people look at like the guns that we use and things like that, it doesn't look like anything you would use in normal daily life. Watching your competitors out there, like I've got what I call a truck gun that looks exactly like almost every rifle I saw out there.
Yeah. It's duty guns.
Yeah, they're duty guns for sure.
Stuff that I carried in the Army, stuff I carried as an agent. And most of the guys are running out there. They got police or sheriff's deputy on the back of their armor because that's what they wore yesterday when they're on duty. So what that effectively does is it levels the playing field. The guy that's going to win is the guy that knows how to reach out, knows his hold-offs, and can reach out to 250 yards and not mess up a bunch getting there.
Right.
And that's, I guess maybe that's another question I get a lot too is, who do you think is going to win? What kind of person is going to win? And I say it every time to the athletes. It's not going to be the strongest dude out here. Maybe not even the fastest. And it's not going to be the best shooter. It's going to be that person that can blend those two in the most balanced way.
Right.
And so I also like to talk a lot about everybody, no matter what their skill level, has a point at which their skill level deteriorates as the stress in their body elevates.
Yeah, that's true.
So in other words, the better shape I'm in, let's say it takes you, let's say we do the sled drag event that we saw this morning. And from the time of go, we start dragging a sled downrange. And let's say you're in better aerobic shape than I am. So you drag the sled down there and drag it back, and you sprint down and you sprint back. Everybody's pretty even for those first two downrange movements.
Yep.
About the third movement down, that second sled drag, when they start to go back down, that's when you see the field start to separate. And what you're seeing there is the different aerobic capabilities of those people. The people that have been putting in the time, they have a higher lactic acid threshold, for example. They're going to be start to move out in the front. Or you're going to get the guy who's pushing through and he's blasting into his lactic acid threshold. But now when he gets up to the line, he can't hold his hands straight because he's breathing so hard.
Right.
So what you're seeing is that guy's heart rate and respiration rate reaches a point that his skill sets start to deteriorate. And everybody has that point. But if you're in better shape than me aerobically, you're going to extend that time that you're effective with your weapon systems to 6-7 minutes when I'm dying on the vine at 4 minutes.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I totally do.
So when you look at the body styles, we've got some beef dudes out there.
There's some big dudes out there.
There are some guys that got biceps as big as my thighs. And they're amazing athletes. They pick up the Atlas stone and ran down and back with it, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look, they're not the ones in the lead right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's that guy that's somewhat slender, somewhat muscular. What I say, the average guy in special operations, medium height, medium build, and in my case, medium bald, right? And those are the guys that are going to be out front.
Yeah.
And in every case, they're the surprise. They're the ones on the podium
it's like
getting the trophy.
the gray man, right? Yeah. It's like the dude you wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the guys that are out there like kicking ass.
Yeah. They got that lanky gorilla strength. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, where did that come from? He grabs you and squeezes your arm and you go to your knee.
Yeah. No kidding.
So yeah, but those are the guys that are winning.
That's cool.
So
so let's talk big picture, Tim. Like, where do you see the sport growing? Do you see like you guys creating stars? Do you see this being, like a tactical games in every state, or what's kind of the vision for the organization?
Yeah, I'm so new to the not. Let me say this right. I've been around guns since I was 17, right?
Mm-hmm.
So guns and all that is not new to me. Tactics aren't new to me. The business side of it is all new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning a bunch every day. My learning curve is nearly straight up. But I love what we're doing. I love the direction we're going. We're growing very rapidly, almost faster than I can handle as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a good problem to have. It's a high quality problem.
That's right. I'm starting to co-opt some talented people to help. Sarah, the girl that does our social media and sponsorship, she's really and honestly more like a VP of the tactical games. She's been amazing and helpful, and literally couldn't have gotten where we are without her help. Her boyfriend Jason is kind of coming on board and taking on some responsibility, and they're just been amazing. The volunteers have come out, and they're starting to help us get momentum as an entity or an event. What's my vision? Because we have firearms, I don't think we'll ever get to the size or scale of something like a CrossFit.
Right.
I mean, we just can't have a shooting range every 2 or 3 blocks in a city. But you can
always hope, right?
You can open a CrossFit gym every 2 blocks, right?
Yeah. I remember like when I first started shooting 3-gun, I had a girlfriend that I would ask to like, hey, why don't you come watch one of the matches? She's like, well, they put them so far away. I'm like, we live in Denver. Like, they don't put ranges in the middle of the city.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll grow. I think it's going to be the next big thing in the shooting sports. It's going to take us a little time to get there. I'm not going to outrun my headlights and sacrifice the quality of the events or, the premise on what we're doing.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. We're going to keep it pure to the original design, and I think that's what draws people to it. We've had a couple of competitive shooters come to the events and have some, I don't want to necessarily call them complaints, but constructive criticism afterwards, and it was specifically from a 3-gun point of view, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But my response is we're different by design.
Sure.
We're not trying to be 3-gun. And if I don't mean this to sound rude, but if that's what you're looking for, there's plenty of 3-gun out there.
Absolutely.
Go do that. Please go do that. But we're not going to become that. We're going to stay the way we are and test people the way it's designed to test people. And I think it's growing rapidly, and everybody loves it. Matter of fact, the civilian side of our demographic is the fastest growing portion of
I'm sure
of the what we're doing.
Well, and when you look at it, like there's just taking all the veterans that are out there and the fact that we've been at war for 20 years, like there's still way more civilians.
Yeah.
So I mean
Right.
your market's like obviously bigger there.
Yeah.
And I've been working on this theory for some time now that there are more people like us than we think that there are. And I think Hollywood and television shows and stupid shit that we feed ourselves, junk media, has convinced us that we're the minority of people out there. But like I've traveled all across this country and I've met so many people, and there are so many people that are like us that have like, strong values, pride in our country. We love to be outdoors. We love to do hard things, and we want to be challenged, and we like to shoot guns.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as verboten in Main Street America as you would think by watching the stupid box, the television.
Right.
So I think you're right. I don't think you're ever going to be on ESPN, but I think you really got something here.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have a lot of participation of actual people coming out and playing in the dirt with you.
Yeah. Well, Brownells is our title sponsor this year, and they've enabled us in a big way to move forward. Separate from Brownells, we've had some talks with a couple of other entities about being on Roku and
cool.
having our matches available on where you can get on television and watch them.
Yeah.
Maybe not live broadcast yet, but definitely in a after the fact viewership.
Sure.
So
we're
super excited about that.
From my point of view, I mean, we're working on 4 AA batteries right here.
Oh yeah.
Like the live thing always seems like a wonderful idea, but we so often find ourselves nowhere near a cell tower when we have like these type of events,
Yeah.
That's definitely like a big challenge to overcome. So,
well, I'm not ready to roll it out in detail, but I will say that we have a phase 2 plan that may take the tactical games in another format indoors.
Oh,
and into the population centers. I want to get into details and give it away, but we may be in downtown, Denver.
Yeah, okay.
Or downtown Atlanta or downtown, Jacksonville, Florida or something.
Well, I'll tell you what, when the time does come to talk about that, want to have you back on the 3 Gun Show, and
absolutely.
We'll talk about it and let the audience know what you're up to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, so Tim, I'm going to give you a minute here. Anything you want to let the audience know that I haven't asked you?
I think we've covered it. I'm super, super, super pleased to be surrounded by amazing people that just love what we're doing. We're passionate. They're passionate about the shooting sports and want to see this grow. And we welcome folks to come out and watch the events, spectate.
A lot more spectators out here than I've ever seen in a 3 Gun match.
Bring their families. We just want to support the shooting sports. From our perspective. And, if you're out there and you're a 3 Gun guy, an IPSC, IDPA guy, whatever it is, or gal, come on out and give it a shot. Don't be intimidated by the athletics that are involved. Again, a guy can go or a gal can go at their own pace.
Yeah.
And they will not be humiliated or harangued by the crowd. Quite the opposite. They'll be lifted up and cheered on and patted on the back and welcomed with open arms.
Yeah, it's pretty cool culture that you guys have cultivated out here. And so we should touch on one thing you said for a minute. You do have like ladies divisions, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so it is.
And old geezer division.
Yeah.
We call it the masters division. So I created that for me in case I ever get to not run it and I get to do it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like it. Well, Tim, cool. You're doing cool stuff. What's website we can go check out more information?
Sure, www.thetacticalgames.com. And, of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram under those names
Under the Tactical Games as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we'll include links in the show notes for people to go check out. Tim, thanks for taking an hour in your busy event weekend to chat with us here on the 3 Gun Show, man. I love what you're doing. It was exciting to see it live and in person. I'm pissed now that I didn't sign up for this match, so I'm going to have to come and do one in the future, man. So thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
finished. Unload, show clear.